My boyfriend labeled me ugly before his friend and ditched me at a restaurant, leaving me to cover the dinner tab. As he strode off, he loudly proclaimed, "A girl like you ought to be thankful I even took you out." I just smiled and calmly waited. This morning, my phone exploded with 20 missed calls. The device wouldn't cease ringing. 20 unanswered calls. Can you believe the audacity? 3 days. Just 3 days after Mason Taylor publicly humiliated me, called me ugly, and left me with a $200 dinner bill and a completely shattered heart, he called. His name, Mason Taylor, flashed on my screen, but all I could hear was the terror in his 3 a.m. voicemail. "Hazel, please, you have to call me back. Something's happening. Something's very wrong. I'm begging you." I just smiled, let it go to voicemail again, and watched the morning sun stream in. How did I go from the broken-hearted victim to the one holding all the cards, making the man who thought he was untouchable beg for mercy? The answer lies in what happened that night at Romanos, and more importantly, what I discovered about the man I thought I loved. Some secrets are buried so deep that when they finally surface, they don't just hurt, they destroy everything in their path. And Mason Taylor was about to learn that the quiet, ugly girl he'd discarded so carelessly had been hiding secrets of her own. 3 days earlier, I sat across from Mason at Romanos, the upscale Italian restaurant where we'd had our first date 2 years ago. The irony wasn't lost on me that he'd chosen the same place to end things, though I didn't know it yet. "You look beautiful tonight," he'd said, but his eyes were already scanning the room, searching for someone, anyone, more interesting than his girlfriend of 2 years. I'd worn the emerald green dress he bought me for Christmas. My auburn hair fell in soft waves, and I'd spent an hour perfecting my makeup. I thought I looked good. I thought he'd think I looked good, too. God, how naive I was. "Thank you," I'd whispered, reaching across the table to touch his hand. His skin felt cold, distant. "Mason, is everything okay? You seem different lately." He pulled his hand away and signaled the waiter for another whiskey. His third, "Everything's fine, Hazel. Can a guy take his girlfriend out for dinner without getting the third degree?" The words stung, but I pushed the feeling down. Mason had been stressed with work lately, or so he told me. His marketing firm was demanding. I understood pressure. I worked 60-hour weeks at the hospital as a trauma nurse. I knew about stress. I didn't mean, "Hey, Mason!" I turned to see 3 men approaching our table. I recognized them immediately. Jake Charles, Mason's college roommate with the perfectly styled blonde hair and expensive suits. Trevor Banks, who worked at the same marketing firm and always made uncomfortable jokes. And Ryan Mitchell, the one who never remembered my name despite meeting me dozens of times. "Guys!" Mason's entire demeanor changed. His face lit up like someone had plugged him into an electrical outlet. "What are you doing here?" "We were just finishing up dinner with some clients," Jake said, his eyes barely acknowledging my presence. "Mind if we join you for a drink?" I wanted to scream, "Yes, I mind!" This was supposed to be our night. We hadn't had a proper date in weeks, and I'd been looking forward to reconnecting. But Mason was already pulling out chairs before I could object. "Of course. Hazel, you remember the guys?" "Hi," I said softly, managing a small wave. Trevor nodded absently. Ryan looked right through me. Jake at least had the courtesy to smirk. The next hour was torture. They talked about work, about people I didn't know, about sports I didn't follow. Every time I tried to contribute, one of them would interrupt or change the subject. Mason laughed at their jokes. Jokes that weren't funny. Jokes that were sometimes cruel. Jokes that made me shrink further into my chair. "So, Mason," Trevor said, leaning back in his chair and eyeing me with a look I couldn't quite decipher. "When are you going to upgrade?" The table went quiet. Mason's whiskey glass paused halfway to his lips. "What do you mean?" His voice was carefully neutral. "Come on, man." Jake jumped in, his voice lowering to what he probably thought was a whisper, but wasn't. "You know what we mean. You're successful. You're good-looking. You've got that new promotion coming up. Don't you think it's time for an adjustment?" My blood turned to ice water. They were talking about me, right in front of me, like I wasn't even there. "Guys," Mason said, but there was no conviction in his voice. No anger, no defense of the woman he supposedly loved. "I mean, look around this place," Ryan said, gesturing broadly at the elegant restaurant filled with beautiful couples. "Look at the caliber of women here. Don't you want someone who fits?" I stared at Mason waiting for him to tell them to stop, waiting for him to defend me. waiting for him to remember that he'd once told me I was the most beautiful woman he'd ever seen. That he loved my smile, my laugh, the way I got excited about old movies and rescued stray cats. Instead, Mason drained his whiskey and set the glass down with a sharp clink. "You know what?" he said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "You're right." The restaurant noise faded to a dull buzz. My heart stopped beating. The world tilted sideways. "Mason?" My voice came out as barely a whisper. He turned to look at me then, and I saw a stranger. The warm man I'd fallen in love with was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. His dark brown eyes, the ones I'd once lost myself in, looked at me like I was something distasteful he'd found on the bottom of his shoe. "Hazel, this isn't working anymore." "What?" "What do you mean?" The three men leaned back in their chairs like they were settling in to watch a show. Jake actually smiled. "I mean us. This." Mason gestured vaguely between us. "I'm moving up in the world, and I need someone who can move up with me. Someone who fits the image I'm trying to create." Image. I felt like I was drowning. "Mason, I don't understand." "What image? What are you talking about?" "Look, Hazel." He sighed like this conversation was tedious. Like breaking up with me was just another item on his to-do list. "You're a nice girl. You're adequate. But let's be honest here." The word adequate hit me like a physical blow. "Let's be honest about what?" Mason looked around the table at his friends, who were all nodding encouragingly. Drawing strength from their approval, he sat up straighter and looked me directly in the eyes. "You're not pretty enough for where I'm going in life." The words hung in the air like smoke. I felt every person at nearby tables turn to look at us, felt their pity and curiosity burning into my skin. "Mason, please don't do this," I whispered. "Not here. Not like this. When would be a good time, Hazel? When would be the right time to tell you that you're just not enough?" Trevor snorted. "Damn, dude." "Harsh but necessary." Jake added, "Sometimes you have to be cruel to be kind." "You want to know the truth?" Mason continued, his voice getting louder. Other diners were definitely staring now. "The truth is that I've been embarrassed to be seen with you for months. My colleagues asked me about my girlfriend, and I make excuses not to bring you to company events because you don't fit. You don't belong in my world." Each word was a knife between my ribs. I gripped the edge of the table so hard my knuckles turned white. "Mason, stop, please. You work in a hospital dealing with blood and vomit all day. You drive a 10-year-old Honda. You shop at discount stores and think Olive Garden is fine dining. And you?" He paused, looking me up and down with disgust. "You're just not attractive enough to make any of that worth overlooking." Ryan whistled low. "Jesus, Mason. What?" She needs to hear this. She needs to understand reality. I felt tears threatening, but I refused to cry in front of them. I refused to give them that satisfaction. "So that's it?" I managed to ask. 2 years and that's it?" 2 years too long," Mason said, standing up and pulling out his wallet. He threw a $20 bill on the table. "That should cover my drinks. You can handle the rest, right? Consider it a farewell gift." The dinner bill was over $200. I was a trauma nurse, not a brain surgeon. $200 was groceries for 2 weeks. "Mason, I can't afford—" "You'll figure it out," he said, already putting on his jacket. "You always do." His 3 friends stood up with him like a pack of hyenas following their leader. "See you around, Hazel," Jake said with mock sympathy. "Maybe." They started walking toward the door, laughing and talking like they hadn't just destroyed a human being. Like they hadn't just taken 2 years of my life and thrown it in the garbage. But Mason wasn't done yet. As they reached the restaurant entrance, he turned back and raised his voice loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. "A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you for as long as I did." The laughter that followed them out the door echoed in my ears like gunshots. I sat there in the suddenly too quiet restaurant, surrounded by strangers pitying me, staring at my own humiliation. The waiter approached cautiously, like I might bite. "Miss, will you be needing anything else?" "Just the check, please," I whispered. When he brought it, I stared at the total with numb disbelief. $237.43. More than I had in my checking account until payday. I smiled, not because I was happy, not because I was okay. I smiled because something inside me had broken. And when it broke, it revealed something I'd kept buried for a very long time. Something Mason Taylor had no idea existed. Something that was about to make his life very, very complicated. I paid the bill with my credit card and walked out of Romanos with my head held high. The valet brought my 10-year-old Honda, actually a 9-year-old Civic that I'd bought with cash because I believed in living within my means. Mason had always made comments about my car, my clothes, my choices. I thought he was joking, trying to motivate me to better myself. Now I understood. He'd been cataloging my inadequacies for months. The drive home to my modest apartment in the suburbs was a blur of streetlights and tears I refused to let fall. When I finally made it inside, I deadbolted the door, kicked off the heels that had been pinching my feet all night, and walked to my bathroom mirror. Ugly, I said to my reflection. The woman staring back at me had auburn hair that caught the light like copper, green eyes that men had once called mesmerizing, and the kind of delicate features that belonged in Renaissance paintings. I wasn't a supermodel, but I'd never considered myself ugly. I thought I was pretty. More importantly, I thought Mason thought I was pretty. Adequate, I continued, testing the word like poison on my tongue. I'd graduated summa cum laude from nursing school. I'd worked in trauma units in 3 different cities. I'd saved lives, comforted families, and made a difference in the world every single day. I'd never considered myself adequate. I'd thought I was accomplished. But Mason was right about one thing. I wasn't who I appeared to be. I walked to my bedroom and opened the closet door. Behind my work scrubs and casual clothes, pushed to the very back where I never looked, was a garment bag I hadn't touched in over 3 years. Inside was a black cocktail dress that had cost more than Mason made in a month. Beside it hung jewelry that could have paid off his student loans. At the bottom of the bag were shoes that were works of art and a clutch purse that had been handmade in Italy. I pulled out my laptop and logged into a bank account I hadn't accessed since I'd moved to the city and started over as just Hazel, the nurse. Current balance, $2,947,392.67. I scrolled through my portfolio. Tech stocks, real estate investments, municipal bonds, all performing beautifully, just as my financial advisor had predicted. Then I opened my other laptop, the one I kept hidden in a false bottom of my dresser drawer, the one with software that cost more than most people's cars. It was time to remember who I used to be. My name is Hazel Wilson, and yes, I'm a trauma nurse. But I'm also the daughter of tech mogul Richard Blackstone, founder and CEO of Blackstone Industries. I'm worth more than Mason and his 3 idiot friends would make in their combined lifetimes. 3 years ago, after my father's death, I'd inherited not just his money, but his company, a company I'd helped him build from the ground up, starting with coding lessons when I was 12 and progressing to corporate strategy by the time I was 25. But inheriting billions at 26 had taught me something valuable. When people know you're rich, they never love you. They love your money, your connections, your power. They love what you can do for them. So I'd made a choice. I'd put professional managers in charge of Blackstone Industries, moved to a new city, and started over as a trauma nurse, something I'd always wanted to try. I'd lived modestly, driven ordinary cars, shopped at normal stores. I'd wanted to find someone who would love me for me, not for what I could give them. I'd thought I'd found that person in Mason Taylor. How wrong I'd been. I opened my secure messaging system and typed a quick message to my head of security, a former CIA operative named Victoria Cross, who'd worked for my father for 15 years. Vic, need a deep background check on Mason Taylor. DOB, March 15, 1992. Currently employed at Pinnacle Marketing Solutions. Also need full profiles on Jake Charles, Trevor Banks, and Ryan Mitchell. All associates of the target. Need everything. Finances, relationships, secrets, weaknesses. Timeline, 48 hours. The response came back in less than 5 minutes. Understood. Anything I should know about the level of detail required? I smiled at my reflection in my laptop screen. Find everything, Vic. Leave no stone unturned. They hurt someone I care about. Will do. Sorry to hear that. Do you need additional resources? Not yet, but keep the team on standby. I closed the laptop and walked back to my closet. Tomorrow, I would go to work, smile at my patients, and pretend to be heartbroken Hazel Wilson, the dumped nurse who couldn't afford a fancy dinner. But tonight I had planning to do. Mason Taylor had made the mistake of thinking I was weak, ordinary, and beneath him. He'd humiliated me in public because he thought I had no power, no resources, no ability to fight back. He was about to learn that sometimes the quietest people are quiet for a very good reason. The next morning at the hospital, I went through my rounds like a ghost. I checked on Mrs. Rodriguez, who was recovering from a heart attack. I helped Dr. Thompson stabilize a car crash victim. I comforted a scared teenager who'd overdosed at a party. Normal Hazel Wilson things. The kind of adequate work that adequate people do. My phone buzzed with a text from my best friend and fellow nurse, Emma Clark. Girl, you look like hell. Coffee break? No. Emma was the only person in this city who knew anything about my past. And even she didn't know everything. I'd met her during nursing school and told her I came from money, but wanted to make my own way. She thought money meant my family was upper middle class, not that I could buy the hospital we worked in without checking my bank balance. Okay, spill, Emma said when we sat down in the hospital cafeteria with our terrible coffee. You're doing that thing where you smile but your eyes look dead. What happened? Mason broke up with me. That bastard, how? I told her the story, watching her face cycle through disbelief, anger, and finally rage. He called you what? In public? Emma's voice carried across the cafeteria, making several people turn to look. That piece of garbage. Hazel, honey, you know he's wrong, right? You know you're beautiful. Do I? I asked quietly. Yes, you absolutely do. You're stunning. You're brilliant. You're kind. And you save lives for a living. Mason Taylor is a walking pile of mediocrity in an expensive suit. You're worth 100 of him. If only she knew how literally true that was. It's fine, I said. I'm fine. No, you're not. You're planning something. You get this look when you're planning something. It's the same look you had when you figured out how to prove that Dr. Kingston was stealing medication. Emma knew me well. Too well. I'm not planning anything. What would I plan? I'm just a nurse, remember? Just adequate. Don't you dare, Emma said, pointing her fork at me like a weapon. Don't you dare let that jerk make you believe you're anything less than amazing. My phone buzzed. A message from Victoria Cross, initial sweep complete. Meet tonight. Your place 9:00 p.m. I typed back quickly. Confirmed. Who's that? Emma asked. Wrong number, I lied smoothly. Listen, I should get back to work. Mrs. Rodriguez needs her medication adjusted. Hazel. Emma grabbed my hand. Promise me you won't do anything stupid. I know you're hurt, but don't let him turn you into someone you're not. I squeezed her hand and gave her my most reassuring smile. Don't worry about me, Emma. I'm going to be just fine. At exactly 9:00 p.m., Victoria Cross knocked on my apartment door. She looked exactly the same as she had 3 years ago. Platinum blonde hair pulled back in a severe bun, sharp blue eyes that missed nothing, and the kind of understated elegance that came from years of operating in high-stakes environments. Hazel, she said, embracing me briefly. You look good. Civilian life agrees with you. Thanks, Vic. Come in. She set her briefcase on my kitchen table and opened it with practiced efficiency. I have to say, when you disappeared into suburban nursing life, I never expected to hear from you again. Your father would be proud, by the way. The company's stock price has increased 40% since you took over. The managers you recommended are excellent. They are, but they're not you. Victoria pulled out a thick file. Now let's discuss why you want to destroy Mason Taylor. I didn't say I wanted to destroy him. Victoria gave me a look that could have frozen water. Hazel, I've known you since you were 16 years old. I know the difference between a routine background check and a nuclear option investigation. This is a nuclear option. I sank into my chair. Tell me what you found. Mason Taylor is a textbook narcissist with delusions of grandeur and financial problems he hides well. Victoria opened the file with a flourish. On the surface, he looks good. Marketing manager at Pinnacle. Nice apartment, expensive clothes, drives a leased BMW. But dig deeper. She spread photos and documents across my table like she was laying out a hand of cards. His credit cards are maxed out. He owes $43,000 in student loans. His rent is 2 months behind, and he's been moving money between accounts to avoid overdraft fees. The expensive lifestyle? It's all smoke and mirrors. What about his job? Pinnacle Marketing is struggling. They've been laying people off quietly for 6 months. Mason's position is safe for now, but barely. And there's something else. Victoria's voice dropped. He's been embezzling. My blood went cold. What? Small amounts. $100 here, $200 there. He's been skimming from client expense accounts and billing personal charges as business expenses. I estimate he's stolen about $15,000 over the past year. Does Pinnacle know? Not yet. But they will once someone knows where to look. Victoria smiled. The question is, do you want them to find out sooner rather than later? I stared at Mason's photo. He looked so confident, so smug. Even in a corporate headshot, his arrogance radiated through the camera. What about his friends? Jake Charles is drowning in gambling debts. Trevor Banks is having an affair with his boss's wife. Ryan Mitchell has a sealed juvenile record that would definitely affect his security clearance at his defense contractor job. How sealed? Let's just say it involves violence and leave it at that. I absorbed this information, feeling pieces of a plan clicking into place in my mind. Vic, I need you to do something for me. Name it. I want you to quietly tip off Pinnacle about Mason's embezzlement, but don't make it obvious. Make it look like routine accounting caught the discrepancies. Victoria nodded. Done. What else? Can you arrange for Jake Charles's gambling debts to be called in? All at once. Easily. His primary creditor is someone we've done business with. And Trevor's affair? I can make sure his boss finds out, anonymously, of course. And Ryan's record? Victoria's smile was sharp as a blade. Let me worry about that. I walked to my window and looked out at the quiet suburban street. 3 days ago, I'd been just another woman trying to find love in a complicated world. Now, I was planning the systematic destruction of 4 men who thought they were untouchable. Are you sure about this? Victoria asked quietly. Once we start, there's no going back. These men will be ruined. I thought about Mason's voice carrying across Romanos' restaurant. A girl like you should be grateful I even dated you. I thought about the laughter that followed. I thought about every woman who'd felt their cruelty was justified. They should have thought of that before they decided to humiliate someone they believed was powerless. Victoria began packing up her files. Consider it done. But Hazel, this is just the beginning. From what I found, Mason Taylor has made a lot of enemies. A lot of people would be very interested to learn about his financial situation and his creative accounting. After Victoria left, I sat in my quiet apartment and opened my laptop. I pulled up Mason's social media profiles, his LinkedIn, his company bio. In every photo, he looked successful, confident, happy. By the time I was done with him, all of that would be gone. But I wasn't interested in just ruining his life. That would be too simple. Too clean. I wanted him to understand exactly how it felt to be humiliated in public. I wanted him to know what it was like when the whole world could see your shame. I wanted him to beg. And then I wanted him to know exactly who had brought him down. My phone rang at 3 a.m. Mason's name flashed across the screen. I let it go to voicemail. The plan was just beginning. The first domino fell on Tuesday. I was restocking medical supplies in the trauma unit when Emma burst through the doors, her eyes wide with excitement. Hazel, did you see the news about that marketing company? Pinnacle something? My hands never paused in their work, but my heart rate spiked. What news? Embezzlement scandal. Apparently some manager was stealing from client accounts. They fired him and called the police. It's all over the local business news. I pulled out my phone and navigated to the local news website. There, in black and white, was the headline, Local Marketing Manager Arrested for Embezzlement. Mason's corporate headshot stared back at me from the screen. The accused, Mason Taylor, 30, allegedly stole approximately $15,000 from client expense accounts over the past year. Pinnacle Marketing Solutions discovered the discrepancies during a routine audit and immediately contacted authorities. Taylor was arrested at his workplace Tuesday morning. I had to bite my lip to keep from smiling. Wow, I said, keeping my voice carefully neutral. That's terrible. Isn't that your ex-boyfriend? Emma asked, peering at my phone screen. Yeah, it is. Holy crap, Hazel. I mean, I know he was a jerk, but I never thought he was a criminal. You never really know someone, I murmured. The second domino fell on Wednesday. Victoria sent me a text with a link to a local gossip blog. Prominent defense contractor employee loses. Security clearance after juvenile record surfaces. Ryan Mitchell's photo accompanied an article detailing how his sealed juvenile record for assault had somehow found its way to the security office. Without his clearance, he couldn't do his job. Without his job, he couldn't afford his mortgage, his car payments, or his carefully cultivated lifestyle. The third domino fell on Thursday. Trevor Banks's affair made it into the society pages when his boss's wife threw a very public, very expensive vase at him in the middle of an upscale restaurant. The accompanying photo showed Trevor covered in water and white roses, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. His boss fired him the next day, but Jake Charles's downfall was my masterpiece. Victoria had arranged for all his gambling debts to be called in simultaneously on Friday morning. When Jake couldn't pay, his creditors made it clear that his kneecaps were on the line. Desperate, he did what desperate people do. He made terrible decisions. He tried to steal money from his own company. Unlike Mason, Jake was clumsy about it. He was caught within hours. And by Friday evening, he was in jail alongside his former friend. By Saturday morning, Mason's entire circle had collapsed. That's when he started calling me. The first call came at 6 a.m. I was making coffee, humming quietly to myself, when my phone rang. Hazel, thank God you answered. Mason? I injected confusion into my voice. Why are you calling me? I thought you said... Look, I know what I said at the restaurant was wrong. I was drunk. I was showing off for the guys. I didn't mean it. You seemed pretty clear about what you meant. Please, Hazel, I'm in trouble. Real trouble. I've been arrested. I've lost my job and I need help. What kind of help? Legal help. Financial help. I can't afford a good lawyer. And the public defender they gave me looks like he's barely out of law school. I let silence stretch between us. Hazel, are you there? I'm here. I'm just confused about why you think I'd help you. You said I was ugly, remember? You said I was adequate at best. You said I should be grateful you dated me. I was wrong. I was completely wrong. You're beautiful. You're amazing. And I was an idiot to let you go. So you want me back? Yes. Absolutely. We can work this out. We can. I hung up. He called back immediately. I let it go to voicemail. Hazel, please don't hang up on me. I love you. I know I have a shitty way of showing it, but I love you. Please call me back. The second call came 2 hours later. Hazel, something really weird is happening. It's not just me. Jake, Trevor, Ryan, we're all going through hell right now. Jake and I are both arrested. Trevor lost his job. Ryan lost his clearance. It's like someone is targeting us. Now that was interesting. That does sound strange, I said carefully. Right? I mean, what are the odds? All 4 of us having disasters in the same week? Pretty low, I'd imagine. Exactly. Look, I know this sounds crazy, but I think someone is messing with us. Someone with serious resources. Like who? I don't know. A competitor, maybe? Or someone we pissed off. I can't think of anyone with that kind of power. He was getting closer to the truth than I'd expected. Mason was stupid, but he wasn't completely oblivious. Mason, I think you're being paranoid. Sometimes bad things just happen all at once to all of us. Come on, Hazel, you're smart. You see patterns at the hospital all the time. Doesn't this seem orchestrated to you? I think you're looking for someone to blame for your own bad choices. My bad choices? Hazel, I didn't choose to have someone discover my financial irregularities. I was careful. Very careful. Maybe not careful enough. There was a long pause. You know what? You're right. I made mistakes and now I'm paying for them. But that doesn't change the fact that I need help. And you're the only person I trust. The only person you trust? Really? Yes. You're the only person who ever cared about me for me. Not for what I could give them. The irony was so thick I could have cut it with a knife. What exactly do you want from me, Mason? A loan. Just enough to hire a decent lawyer. I'll pay you back as soon as I get back on my feet. How much? $50,000, I almost laughed. $50,000. I made that much in investment interest every few days. Mason, I'm a trauma nurse. Where would I get $50,000? You could get $50,000, and I can't qualify for a loan that big. Then what about a smaller amount? $20,000? $10,000? Anything would help. I pretended to consider this. I might be able to scrape together $5,000. But Mason, after what you said to me, after how you treated me, why should I help you? Because you're a good person. Because you save lives every day. Because somewhere deep down you still care about me. He was right about one thing. I still cared about him. I cared about watching him squirm. I need time to think about it. How much time? Hazel, I don't have a few days. My hearing is Monday. If I don't have a lawyer, then you'll have a public defender. Lots of people get by with public defenders. Lots of people go to prison with public defenders. Maybe you should have thought of that before you started stealing. The silence stretched so long I thought he'd hung up. Hazel, do you hate me? Such a simple question. Such a complicated answer. No, Mason, I don't hate you. It was the truth. Hate was too small an emotion for what I felt. Hate was what you felt for someone who'd hurt you, but was still on your level. What I felt for Mason Taylor was something much more dangerous. I felt nothing. He was a problem to be solved, an equation to be balanced, a stain to be cleaned up. Thank you, he whispered. I'll call you tomorrow. Sure. After I hung up, I opened my laptop and transferred $5,000 from one of my investment accounts to my regular checking account. Not because I was going to give it to Mason, but because I wanted him to see exactly how much I was worth when the time came to reveal the truth. The third call came Sunday night, and Mason sounded different, desperate. Hazel, I've been thinking about what happened. It's my family. My blood turned to ice water. Who? Your family. What? Think about it. You told me your family had money, right? Not like rich, but comfortable. What if they found out what I said to you? What if they decided to teach me a lesson? I almost admired his intuition. He was completely wrong about the details, but he grasped the essential truth. Someone with resources was systematically destroying his life. Mason, my family doesn't have the kind of money or connections to do something like this. Are you sure? I mean, really sure? Because the timing is too perfect. I break up with you in the most public, humiliating way possible, and then within a week, my entire world falls apart. That's quite an ego you have there. You think my family cares enough about me to launch some kind of revenge plot? Don't they? The question hung in the air like a blade. Mason, you're being paranoid. My family barely has enough money to cover their own bills, much less hire private investigators or whatever you think they did. Then explain it. Explain how 4 successful guys all get destroyed in the same week. You weren't that successful, I said quietly. You just pretended to be. What's that supposed to mean? It means maybe the universe is just correcting an imbalance. Maybe you all got away with things for too long, and now the bill is coming due. That's not how the world works, Hazel. Isn't it? The fourth call came Monday morning at 3 a.m. I was awake anyway, sitting in my living room with a cup of tea, watching the sunrise and thinking about justice. Hazel! Mason's voice was raw, broken. I'm sorry. I'm so f***ing sorry. What happened? My hearing went badly. They're talking about 18 months in prison. 18 months, Hazel. And that's if I plead guilty. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you really sorry? Because sometimes I wonder if you're happy about this. I took a slow sip of my tea. Why would I be happy about this? Because of what I said to you. Because I hurt you, Mason. I'm not the kind of person who takes pleasure in other people's suffering. It was mostly true. I didn't take pleasure in suffering in general. Just his suffering. Just the suffering of men who thought they could crush other people without consequences. I know you're not. That's why I'm calling. That's why I need you to help me. I told you I need time to think about the loan. Not the loan. Something else. What? I need you to be a character witness. The request hit me like a physical blow. What? At my sentencing hearing, I need people to testify that I'm not a bad person, that I made mistakes, but I don't deserve to go to prison. You knew me better than anyone. If you could just tell them about the good times we had, about how I was with you when we were alone. Mason, please. I know I don't deserve your help. I know I was cruel and stupid and wrong about everything. But Hazel, if you could see me now, I'm broken. I'm completely broken. I could hear it in his voice. The arrogance was gone. The confidence was gone. The casual cruelty that had let him humiliate me in public was gone. All that was left was fear and desperation. It was the most beautiful sound I'd ever heard. I'll think about it, I said. Really? Really? Thank you. Thank you so much, Hazel. I promise you, if you help me get through this, I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll be the man you deserved from the beginning. After I hung up, I sat in my quiet apartment and smiled. Mason Taylor thought he was manipulating me. He thought he could use my kindness, my love, my forgiving nature to save himself from the consequences of his own actions. He had no idea that the kind, forgiving Hazel Wilson he'd fallen in love with had died in Romanos' restaurant 3 weeks ago. In her place was someone much more interesting. Someone who understood that mercy was a luxury only the powerful could afford to give. And I was feeling anything but generous. The courthouse was exactly what I'd expected. Imposing gray stone, high ceilings, and the kind of institutional lighting that made everyone look guilty. I sat in the back row of the courtroom, wearing a simple navy dress and my most innocent expression. Mason sat at the defendant's table with his overworked public defender, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks. His expensive suits were gone, replaced by an ill-fitting gray ensemble that screamed, borrowed from a relative. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled, and there were dark circles under his eyes. He looked, in other words, like a man who was finally facing reality. When the judge called for character witnesses, I stood up. "Your Honor, I'd like to speak on behalf of the defendant." Mason's head whipped around, and the relief that flooded his face was almost painful to watch. He mouthed "thank you" at me, his eyes bright with unshed tears. I walked to the witness stand with measured steps, placed my hand on the Bible, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. "State your name and relationship to the defendant," the judge instructed. "My name is Hazel Wilson. Mason Taylor was my boyfriend for 2 years." "Was?" "Yes, Your Honor, we broke up recently." "I see. And despite this breakup, you're here to speak on his behalf?" "I am." "Please tell the court about your relationship with Mr. Taylor." I looked directly at Mason, who was watching me with desperate hope. "Your Honor, I met Mason 2 years ago, and I thought I knew him well. He could be charming, funny, and attentive when he wanted to be. He took me to nice restaurants, bought me gifts, and told me he loved me." Mason nodded encouragingly. "However," I continued, "I also saw another side of Mason Taylor. A side that I think is relevant to these proceedings." The hope in Mason's eyes flickered. "What kind of side, Miss Wilson?" "Mason has a problem with honesty, Your Honor, not just in his professional life, as we've seen with the embezzlement charges, but in his personal relationships as well." Mason's lawyer started to object, but I continued. "He lied to me constantly about his financial situation. He would take me to expensive restaurants and then claim he'd forgotten his wallet, leaving me to pay bills I couldn't afford. He borrowed money from me repeatedly, promising to pay it back, and never did." "How much money?" the judge asked. I'd prepared for this question. Over the past week, I'd carefully documented every dinner I'd paid for, every loan I'd given him, every expense he'd pushed onto me while maintaining his illusion of success. "Approximately $3,000 over the course of our relationship, Your Honor." Mason's face had gone white. "But the financial deception wasn't the worst part," I continued. "The worst part was how he treated me when he thought it didn't matter anymore." "Can you elaborate?" 3 weeks ago, Mason took me to Romanos restaurant. While we were there, some of his friends joined us. In front of these men, and in front of a restaurant full of strangers, Mason told me I was ugly, that I wasn't good enough for him, that I should be grateful he dated me at all. He then left me to pay a $200 dinner bill and walked out, announcing loudly that a girl like me should be grateful I even dated you. The courtroom was dead silent. "This happened 3 weeks ago?" "Yes, Your Honor. And yet you're here today to speak on his behalf." "I'm here today to tell the truth about Mason Taylor's character. The truth is that he's a man who believes rules don't apply to him, whether those rules involve taking money that doesn't belong to him or treating other people with basic human decency." Mason was staring at me like I'd grown a second head. He called me after his arrest, begging for help. Not because he was sorry for how he treated me, but because he needed money for a lawyer. He asked me to loan him $50,000, money he knew I didn't have. And when I couldn't, he settled for asking for smaller amounts. Even now, even after everything he's done, Mason Taylor's primary concern is what other people can do for him. I turned to look directly at Mason. "Your Honor, I don't believe Mason is evil, but I do believe he's selfish, manipulative, and completely unable to accept responsibility for his actions. The embezzlement charges don't surprise me at all. They're exactly the kind of thing someone would do if they believed the world owed them a lifestyle they hadn't earned." The judge was writing notes, nodding slowly. "Is there anything else you'd like to add, Miss Wilson?" "Just this, Your Honor. Mason asked me to come here today because he thought I still loved him, and he thought love would make me lie for him. He thought I was weak and grateful and easily manipulated. He was wrong about all of those things, just like he was wrong when he thought he could steal money without getting caught." I stood up from the witness stand. Mason Taylor isn't a victim of circumstance. He's a man who made deliberate choices to lie, steal, and hurt other people. And now he's facing the consequences of those choices. In my opinion, those consequences are long overdue. The silence that followed my testimony was deafening. I walked back to my seat, feeling every eye in the courtroom on me. Mason's lawyer was frantically whispering in his ear, but Mason wasn't listening. He was staring at me like he was seeing me for the first time. When the judge announced a recess, Mason broke away from his lawyer and approached me in the hallway. "What the hell was that?" he demanded. "That was the truth." "The truth?" Hazel, you just destroyed any chance I had of getting a light sentence. Did I? I thought I was being a character witness. I witnessed your character, and I shared what I saw. You vindictive bitch. I can't believe I ever thought I loved you. I smiled. There's the Mason I know. For a while there, with all the begging and crying, I thought prison had changed you already. You think this is funny? I think justice is beautiful. Mason grabbed my arm, his fingers digging into my skin. You have no idea who you're messing with, don't I? Something in my voice made him loosen his grip. You want to know something interesting, Mason? You were right when you said someone was targeting you and your friends. Someone with resources. Someone with connections. Someone who could orchestrate the kind of systematic destruction you've all experienced. His eyes widened. You were just wrong about who it was. What are you saying? I'm saying that adequate little Hazel Wilson, the ugly trauma nurse who should have been grateful for your attention, isn't quite what she appears to be. Mason's face cycled through confusion, fear, and finally terrible understanding. It was you, of course, but how? You don't have that kind of money, that kind of power. Don't I? I pulled out my phone and showed him my banking app. The screen displayed a balance that made his embezzlement look like pocket change. My name is Hazel Wilson, I said quietly. But my maiden name was Blackstone, as in Blackstone Industries, as in the tech company worth about $12 billion. As in the inheritance I've been managing very successfully for the past 3 years, while pretending to be a simple nurse. Mason's legs gave out. He slumped against the courthouse wall, staring at me like I was a ghost. You're rich. I am wealthy beyond your comprehension, Mason. I could have bought your entire company without noticing the expense. I could have paid your legal fees with my daily investment returns. I could have made all your problems disappear with a single phone call. Then why didn't you? Because you called me ugly in front of a restaurant full of people and left me to pay for dinner. The simplicity of it seemed to break something in his brain. That's it? That's why you destroyed my life? Because I was mean to you at dinner? You humiliated me in public because you thought I was powerless. You were wrong. Hazel, please! If you have all that money, if you have all that power, you can fix this. You can make this go away. Please, I'm begging you. Why would I do that? Because you loved me once. Because somewhere inside, the woman who loved me is still there. I studied his face, taking in the desperation, the fear, the complete collapse of everything he thought he knew about the world. You're right, I said finally. The woman who loved you is still here. Hope flashed across his features. But she died in Romanos' restaurant 3 weeks ago when the man she trusted with her heart decided to destroy her in front of strangers for the entertainment of his friends. Hazel, the woman standing in front of you now, is someone else entirely. Someone who understands that mercy is a luxury and forgiveness is a gift that has to be earned. What do you want? Tell me what you want and I'll do it. I want you to go to prison, Mason. I want you to have 18 months to think about what it feels like when someone more powerful than you decides you're disposable. You can't be serious. I'm completely serious. But don't worry, I'm not completely heartless. I've arranged for you to have the best possible experience while you're incarcerated. What does that mean? It means I made some donations to the prison system. Donations that will ensure you have a private cell, good medical care, access to educational programs, and protection from the more dangerous inmates. Mason stared at me in horror. You're going to let me go to prison, but you're going to make sure I'm comfortable while I'm there? I told you I'm not evil. I just want you to have time to think. Think about what? Think about how it feels to be powerless. Think about how it feels when someone you trust betrays you. Think about how it feels to be dismissed and discarded by someone who thinks they're better than you. The bailiff announced that court was resuming. I have to go, I said. Good luck with your sentencing, Mason. As I walked away, I heard him calling after me. Hazel, wait. We can work this out, we can. But I was already gone. Mason Taylor was sentenced to 18 months in federal prison. I wasn't in the courtroom when it happened. I was at work, helping Dr. Martinez stabilize a construction worker who'd fallen from scaffolding. But Victoria sent me a text with the news. Package delivered. Target acquired. Mission accomplished. That evening, I sat in my apartment with a glass of wine and reflected on the past month. 4 men who'd thought they were untouchable had learned otherwise. 4 men who'd believed they could humiliate someone without consequences had discovered they were wrong. But I wasn't done yet. 6 months into Mason's sentence, I received a letter. It was handwritten on prison stationery and my name was written in careful block letters on the envelope. Dear Hazel, I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, about what I did, and about who you really are. You were right about everything. I was selfish, cruel, and completely blind to what I had. I treated you terribly because I thought you couldn't fight back. I thought you were weak and dependent and grateful. I was wrong about all of it. I've been thinking about something you said in the courthouse hallway. You said the woman who loved me died in Romano's restaurant. I think you're wrong about that. I think that woman was never really there at all. I think you've been playing a game since the day we met, and I was too stupid to realize it. I think you've been watching me, studying me, waiting for me to show you who I really was. And when I finally did, when I revealed exactly how shallow and cruel I could be, you decided it was time to end the game. I don't blame you for that. I would have done the same thing if I were smart enough and powerful enough to pull it off. What I can't figure out is why you dated me in the first place. With your money, your resources, your intelligence, you could have had anyone. Why me? Why waste 2 years on someone like me? I think it's because you were lonely. I think being that rich, that powerful, makes it impossible to trust anyone. Everyone wants something from you. Everyone has an angle. See, you tried an experiment. You pretended to be someone ordinary to see if you could find someone who would love you for who you were, not what you could give them. The experiment failed. I failed. I'm sorry for that, Hazel. Not just sorry I got caught. Not just sorry I'm in prison, but truly sorry that I proved you can't trust anyone. Sorry that I took your hope and crushed it in front of a restaurant full of strangers. You probably won't believe this, but I did love you. Not the real you. I never knew the real you. But I loved the woman you pretended to be. I loved your kindness, your dedication to helping people, your laugh when you watched old movies. I loved how excited you got about small things and how you cried during commercials with dogs. I just loved all of that, less than I loved impressing my friends. I don't know if the real Hazel Blackstone has any of those qualities or if they were all part of the performance. But if they were real, if any part of the woman I fell in love with was real, then I'm sorry I wasn't good enough for her. I'm not writing this to ask for forgiveness. I'm not writing this to ask you to get me out of prison early. I know I deserve to be here. And honestly, prison is probably the safest place for me right now. Jake Charles is in the cell next to mine, and he's told me some interesting stories about what happened to Trevor and Ryan after they got out. Apparently, Trevor's wife left him and took half of nothing, which was still more than he deserved. And Ryan, well, let's just say that losing his security clearance was the least of his problems. Funny how many people have grudges against a guy who used to beat up kids when he was 16. I'm writing this because I want you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. I did love you, as much as someone like me is capable of loving anyone. And I think somewhere under all that anger and calculation, you loved me too. Maybe that's enough. Maybe that's more than either of us expected to get. I hope you find someone worthy of the real you, whoever that is. I hope you find someone who sees your wealth and your power and your intelligence, and still loves the woman who rescues stray cats and cries at movies. I hope you're happy, Hazel. You deserve happiness more than anyone I've ever known. Mason, thank you for the private cell and the protection. You didn't have to do that. The fact that you did tells me that the kind woman I fell in love with was real, at least partly. That means something to me. I read the letter 3 times, then walked to my kitchen and poured myself another glass of wine. Mason Taylor was more perceptive than I'd given him credit for. He'd understood things about me that I'd barely understood myself. He was right about the experiment. I had been testing him, testing all of them, to see if genuine love was possible when money and power were removed from the equation. He was right about the loneliness, too. When you can buy anything, when you can solve any problem with a phone call, when people's entire demeanor changes once they learn your net worth, it becomes impossible to know who actually cares about you. But he was wrong about one thing. The woman he'd fallen in love with wasn't a performance. She was real. She'd been real when she'd nursed him through the flu. Real when she'd laughed at his terrible jokes. Real when she'd fallen asleep in his arms watching old movies. She'd been real right up until the moment he'd called her ugly in front of a restaurant full of strangers. Now she was gone. And in her place was someone harder, smarter, and infinitely more dangerous. I walked to my laptop and opened my secure messaging system. Victoria, I need you to arrange something for me. What do you need? Mason Taylor's sentence. I want it reduced to time served. There was a long pause before Victoria responded. Are you sure about that? He's only been in 6 months. We went to a lot of trouble to put him there. I'm sure. Can you make it happen, of course? Any particular reason? He passed the test. What test? The final exam. I don't understand. I stared at Mason's letter, at his careful handwriting, at words that had cost him something to write. He figured out who I really am, Victoria. Not just the money, not just the power, but the person underneath. And he's genuinely sorry for what he did. Not because he got caught, but because he hurt someone he loved. So you're going to forgive him? No, I'm going to free him. There is a difference. Hazel, make the arrangements. Vic, Mason Taylor has learned his lesson. I was restocking medical supplies in the trauma unit when Emma burst through the doors with a familiar look of excitement. Hazel, guess who I saw at the coffee shop this morning? I didn't have to guess. I'd been expecting this conversation for weeks. Mason Taylor? Emma's face fell. How did you know? Lucky guess. How did he look? Honestly, terrible. I mean, not terrible, but different. Older, sadder. He asked about you. What did you tell him? I told him you were doing great, that you'd been promoted to head trauma nurse, and that you were dating someone new. 2 out of 3 were true. I had been promoted, and I was doing great. The dating part was a fiction I'd asked Emma to maintain. What did he say? He said he was glad you were happy. And then he asked me to give you something. Emma pulled an envelope from her pocket. My name was written across it in the same careful block letters I remembered from his prison letter. Did he say anything else? He said to tell you that he understood why you did what you did, and that he hoped someday you might forgive him enough to read what he wrote. I took the envelope but didn't open it. Emma, what do you think I should do about Mason? Honestly, Hazel, I think you should stay as far away from him as possible. I don't care how sorry he is or how much prison changed him. What he did to you was unforgivable. And if he really has changed, then good for him. He can go change for someone else. That evening, I sat in my apartment with the envelope in my hands. Outside my window, the suburban street was quiet, peaceful, normal. Inside, I was anything but. Finally, I opened it. Hazel, I'm not supposed to contact you. I'm sure you could have me arrested for harassment, and honestly, I wouldn't blame you. But there are things I need to say, and I'm hoping you'll give me the chance to say them. I know what you did. I know you arranged for my early release, just like I know you arranged for my comfortable stay in prison. I know because the same lawyer who told me about my sentence reduction also told me that an anonymous benefactor had been covering his fees. Anonymous benefactor, right? I want you to know that I don't expect anything from you. I'm not writing this to ask for a second chance, or to beg for forgiveness, or to try to win you back. I know that ship sailed a long time ago and it's not coming back to shore. I'm writing this to say thank you. Thank you for showing me who I really was. Thank you for holding up a mirror and forcing me to look at the ugly, selfish, cruel person I'd become. Thank you for teaching me that actions have consequences, even for people who think they're too smart or too charming to get caught. Most of all, thank you for showing me mercy when you had every reason not to. I spent 6 months in prison thinking about what you said in the courthouse. You said the woman who loved me died in Romanos' restaurant. Maybe that's true, but if she's gone, I'm the one who killed her, and I have to live with that for the rest of my life. I'm different now, Hazel. Prison changes you, but more than that, understanding what I lost changes you. I know I can't prove that to you with a letter, and I'm not asking for the chance to prove it in person. I'm just telling you because I think you deserve to know. I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping people who are struggling with debt and financial problems. It doesn't pay much, but it feels good to use my marketing skills to help people instead of taking advantage of them. It feels good to wake up in the morning knowing I'm going to make someone's life better instead of worse. I'm also going to therapy twice a week. Dr. Rodriguez says I have narcissistic tendencies and an unhealthy need for external validation. She says it's going to take years of work to unlearn the patterns I've spent my whole life developing. I'm willing to do the work. I know none of this matters to you. I know you've moved on with your life, found someone who deserves the amazing woman you are. But I needed you to know that your experiment wasn't a complete failure. You wanted to find out if someone could love the real you. The answer is yes, I did love you, Hazel. Not perfectly, not unselfishly, but genuinely. The problem wasn't that you're unlovable. The problem was that I wasn't worthy of loving you. Maybe someday I will be. Not for you. I know that chance is gone, but for someone else. Someone who won't make the mistakes I made. Thank you for everything, Hazel. Thank you for loving me when I didn't deserve it. Thank you for and thank you for freeing me when I'd learned from it. I hope your life is everything you wanted it to be, Mason. I set the letter down and walked to my window. The street was still quiet, still peaceful, still normal. But something had changed inside me. For the first time in almost a year, I felt lighter, like a weight I'd been carrying had finally been lifted. Mason Taylor had hurt me, humiliated me, and betrayed me. But he'd also learned from it, grown from it, and become a better person because of it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe that was more than I'd expected when this whole thing started. I picked up my phone and typed a text message. Mason, I got your letter. I'm proud of the work you're doing, and I'm glad you're getting help. You're right that we can't go back, but I want you to know that I forgive you. Not for your sake, but for mine. Carrying anger is exhausting, and I'm tired of being angry. Be well, Hazel. I hit send before I could change my mind. His response came back within minutes. Thank you. That means more to me than you'll ever know. I deleted his number from my phone, then walked to my closet and pulled out the garment bag I hadn't touched in over a year. Inside were the expensive clothes, the designer jewelry, the symbols of a life I'd left behind when I decided to play at being normal. But I wasn't normal. I never had been. I was Hazel Blackstone, daughter of a tech mogul, heir to a billion-dollar fortune, and one of the most powerful women in the country. It was time to stop pretending to be someone else. It was time to go home. The next Monday, I walked into my supervisor's office and submitted my resignation from the hospital. I told her I'd been offered an opportunity one couldn't turn down, which was true. I'd been offered the opportunity to stop hiding from who I really was. Emma cried when I told her I was leaving. Where are you going? She asked. Back to where I came from. Will I see you again? Of course. You're one of the few people who liked me when you thought I was nobody special. That makes you rarer than diamonds. You were never nobody special, Hazel. You saved lives every day. I know. And I'll keep saving lives. Just differently. 1 week later, I stood in the executive boardroom of Blackstone Industries, wearing a tailored black suit that cost more than most people's cars. Around the table sat 12 of the most powerful executives in the tech industry, all waiting to hear what I had to say. Ladies and gentlemen, I began, my name is Hazel Blackstone, and for the past 3 years, I've been letting other people run my company while I figured out who I wanted to be. I clicked to the first slide of my presentation. I'm done figuring. It's time to get back to work. 6 months later, Blackstone Industries announced a revolutionary new healthcare initiative, a network of trauma centers that would provide free emergency care to anyone who needed it. Staffed by the best medical professionals in the world and funded by one of the largest endowments in history, the first center opened in the city where I'd worked as a nurse. Emma was hired as the head nurse with a salary triple what she'd made at our old hospital. At the dedication ceremony, a reporter asked me why I'd chosen to focus on trauma care. Because trauma changes people, I said. Sometimes it breaks them. Sometimes it makes them stronger. And sometimes it shows them who they really are. I believe everyone deserves the chance to heal from their trauma and become who they're meant to be. Is this initiative personal for you, Miss Blackstone? I thought about Mason Taylor, probably helping someone struggling with debt at his nonprofit job. I thought about the letter he'd written, the genuine remorse in his words, the man he was trying to become. I thought about the woman I'd been when I'd fallen in love with him, and the woman I'd become when he'd betrayed me. All healing is personal, I said. We're all walking around with wounds, some visible and some hidden. The question isn't whether we'll be hurt. We will be. The question is what we choose to do with that hurt. And what did you choose to do with yours? I smiled at the camera, and for the first time in years, the smile reached my eyes. I chose to use it to help other people heal theirs. Later that night, alone in my penthouse apartment overlooking the city, I received a text from an unknown number. Saw the news about your trauma centers. Incredible work. The world is lucky to have you. I stared at the message for a long time, then typed back. The world is lucky to have people willing to do better. Keep doing the work, Mason. It matters. Then I deleted the conversation and blocked the number. Some chapters of your life end with reconciliation. Some end with revenge. This one ended with something rarer. Redemption. Not just for him, but for me too. Because the truth is, Mason Taylor hadn't just shown me who he really was that night in Romanos' restaurant. He'd shown me who I really was too. I was someone who could love deeply, who could be hurt profoundly, and who could choose justice over vengeance when it mattered most. I was someone who could use power responsibly, who could turn pain into purpose, and who could build something beautiful from the ashes of betrayal. I was Hazel Blackstone, and I was finally ready to be her. This whole journey changed me in ways I never expected. It made me wonder, if you had all the power in the world, would you seek revenge or something more? What would you have done in my place? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.